Hi everyone, I hope that all of you who have joined us today are doing well. Thank you for taking your time to attend today's session. My name is Anzala. I'm currently working as a product engineer at Takif, and I'm also leading the WiBSE UAE chapter. Today we have a very interesting topic on how we can lead by building emotional intelligence, and that will be delivered by certified leadership coaches, Dina and Valerie. We hope that you will find this session insightful and interesting. We will take questions at the end of the webinar, but in case you have a question while the workshop is being delivered, feel free to type it in the chat box and the coaches will respond once the webinar is over. So in case this is your first time attending a WiBSE event and you're not aware of our presence, basically we're a subcommittee of CIBSE. The committee has a strong presence in the UK, but we're trying to expand our network in the UAE as well. We host events, workshops, and webinars targeting the importance of leadership, soft skills, and the need for building gender gap in the building services industry. So if you're interested in joining the committee, everyone is welcome to join, so feel free to reach out to us if you're interested. So as I mentioned before, today's webinar is on how we can lead by building one of the most sought after soft skill, which is emotional intelligence. The speakers are certified leadership coaches, and they will provide us with an overview on the importance of emotional intelligence and how building this competency can attribute to personal success. If you would like to reach out to us, specifically WiBSE, we have officially launched our LinkedIn page where we post every week. We spotlight career journeys. If you would like to be featured, if you would like us to spotlight your career journey, if you have any advice or words of encouragement, feel free to reach out to us. The emails are listed on the screen. Either you can reach out to me or you can reach out to my colleague Savarna, and we're looking forward to spotlighting you as well. So, Dina and Valerie, you can take it up from here. You can share your screen now.
Thank you. Okay. Okay. All good? Everyone can see?
Yes, but could you put it in presenter mode?
Ah, okay. Okay, 1 second. Great. Is that everyone's okay?
I don't see anything.
You don't see any presentation?
I can't see it either, Valerie.
Okay. 1 second. Here and all good. And I'm going to put it in presenter mode.
Yeah.
Good for everyone?
Great.
Great. Okay, so thanks for joining today. We'd love to thank Anzala Asher and Women in Building Services Engineering who invited us to speak to you today. It's a great honor to speak to you guys. And first, a little bit about us. We are professional coactive coaches, and we're accredited by the International Coaching Federation, which is the gold standard in coaching. And we're also trained in coaching teams. One of the unique facts about Dina and myself is that we have 35 combined years experience in the corporate world, so we understand the challenges that people face, and part of the reason that we became coaches is to combat some of the issues that we faced in our own corporate experience. And our company, Collective Works, helps leaders and teams create more value for their stakeholders by unlocking what we believe is an organization's greatest potential asset, the power of a healthy, collaborative, well-functioning team. And even though we help people develop leadership behaviors, companies are not going to become resilient due to an inspirational leader, but due to a resilient team. We coach teams, run workshops, and we speak on subjects such as managing change in organizations, creating a coaching culture, and conscious leadership, among other topics. Today, we're here to talk to you about how to learn, practice, and really harness emotional intelligence and use it to become a leader in your business. We'll be covering what exactly is emotionally intelligent leadership, why it's so important to your team and in your business, and the 5 pillars of emotional intelligence and how to build them.
Thanks, Val. Hi, everyone. So regardless of how you define great leadership, for us, emotional intelligence is just a fundamental part of it. The ability to understand those that are around you, as well as being aware of your own strengths and weaknesses. This is what will allow you to build meaningful relationships, both with, other colleagues, people on your teams, but also with potential stakeholders like your clients, for example. And also creating a healthy and emotionally safe work environment has never been more important, as we've seen over the last couple of years. And this isn't to say that the importance of emotional intelligence means that leaders, of course, don't need any technical skills or knowledge. Of course they do. But emotional intelligence represents the qualities that help create opportunities. They help you tackle challenges with ease and also help inspire others to act. And so emotional intelligence is not just for, our business lives, but it also helps in our personal lives as well. It doesn't just impact personal connections and relationships. It's fundamental to what decisions you make, even, and how you make decisions. For leaders and executives, decisions around hiring, around business opportunities, around challenges, conflict, sales, this must all come from a place of deep awareness and understanding of other people. And so in addition, you're not only taking into account other people, but you're also taking into account yourself and how you manage yourself. And so emotional intelligence is important for all of these reasons, but also because it's not just good enough nowadays to know how to become a leader in your life. It's about in your life and work, but it's about becoming the most effective leader. And a study that we found actually showed that over 2/3 of HR professionals value the emotional intelligence of employees rather than their IQ levels. Why? Because again, those studies show that employees with high emotional intelligence are actually better at staying calm under pressure, knowing how to effectively resolve conflict, and are also empathetic to their team members. And I'm sure we all know people that, rank really highly intellectually, but don't do any of these other things so well.
So true. I can think of a few examples.
Yeah.
Okay, so in the upcoming sections, we'll break down the qualities of emotional intelligence into self-awareness, self-management, motivation, empathy, and social skills. We'll also help guide you through exercises that will enable you to develop these qualities and apply them to your current role and beyond. And before we begin, we just wanted to mention that before even thinking about emotional intelligence, obviously leaders and their team members need to have a baseline mental health, which should include the 5 aspects of personal health, which are physical, emotional, social, spiritual, and intellectual. Because people can only start to enhance their emotional intelligence skills from a place of balance. Take these areas into consideration when you're wondering about someone's lack of emotional intelligence. If someone's really struggling in one of these areas, it might take a lot to get them to a place to even begin to be able to think about utilizing these skills. Maybe someone's going through a divorce, so So many things in life can put a person off balance, and obviously no one's going to be perfectly balanced in all of these areas at the same time. But in order to be considered well, it's imperative for none of these areas to be neglected. So keep that in mind. Self-awareness, the first pillar, is the ability to be conscious of how your actions, thoughts, or emotions are or aren't serving you and your purpose. According to a recent discovery by Harvard, our ability to see ourselves clearly leads to increased confidence and creativity, better decision-making, stronger communication, and healthier relationships. And the most self-aware leaders enjoy more effective leadership, happier and more connected employees, and more profitable companies. Self-awareness is the foundation for everything we're going to cover. And it's also the foundation of personal development in general and how we like to explain what coaching is. Coaching helps people increase their self-awareness. It's an information gathering activity, and it requires us to be open and willing to take a look at all the different parts of ourselves, even the parts that we don't necessarily like or we try to avoid. I like to say to our clients that it's sort of like sitting in a tree and looking down at yourself and creating insights and then action steps around the behaviors you'd like to change. There are many different facets of self-awareness, and one of them being the fundamentals to who you are. And how do you answer the question, who are you? For us, the answer lies in your values, your purpose, and your goals. In other words, what's important to you? What is the impact that you're wanting to make and for whom? What is it that you really want to achieve? And why is it important to spend time on this? And we've put this all into a worksheet. And if you'd like to receive the worksheet, just put your email into the chat box or the Q&A. Because achieving our goals is a formula of awareness plus action, and most of us spend a lot of time in the action part of the equation, trying out different ways of doing something, and we hardly spend any time in this awareness part, the information gathering. So how can we know what the best course of action is if we don't have all or even the right information? And that's where self-awareness comes in. So one of the ways to achieve it is self-reflection. And as American philosopher, educator, and pioneer in functional psychology, John Dewey said, we don't learn from experience, we learn from reflecting on experience. So how can we self-reflect? Well, by doing activities that you're already probably very familiar with and have heard about, such as keeping a journal, mindfulness activities, even seeking honest feedback from people. And maybe you're already doing some of these yourself. And if you're not, we would encourage you to experiment with some of these activities and find the ones that work for you and make a practice of it. One really easy thing that I ask my clients to do is schedule 15 minutes into your calendar every Friday morning to look back on your week and reflect on what went well and what you'd like to do differently next week. And I say schedule it for the morning because at the end of the week, we tend to move things that we plan to do on Friday afternoons to the Monday. So if you want it to happen, schedule it in your calendar for the Friday morning. And intuition, or what we call your gut feeling, is also self-awareness. Positive psychology refers to intuition as the sense of knowing without fully understanding how one knows. And if we can learn to connect with it, listen to it, and trust our intuition, it can be a powerful tool to help us navigate our way through self-awareness and ultimately our goals. And the good news is that it's a muscle and it can be strengthened the more that we use it. So are you able to think of times when you listened to your intuition? And what was the result? And what about the times you didn't listen to your intuition, Might things have turned out differently if you had gone with your intuition instead? So learning to tune into it and asking yourself from time to time, what's your gut feeling about something? It can work really well in terms of especially making decisions for yourself. And another tool to increase your self-awareness is by completing a self-assessment. And be willing to go really deep. Here are a few questions that you can use to get started, and these are also on the worksheet that we'll share with you. So how good am I at identifying how I'm feeling? How well do I know why I have certain feelings? How good am I at finding the right words to express my feelings? And in which ways do I express my emotions the best? Writing, talking, painting. What do I do really well? What are some of my biggest achievements? What are the beliefs, strengths, and patterns of behavior that help me achieve these things? And especially, what is something that has consistently held me back? And wait a second, I went a little bit quickly. Yeah, so because if you can identify what's been holding you back, you can make a plan and maybe even hire a coach to work on that. So I'll give you an example. Recently, I realized that there were two things that were really slowing me down since the beginning of the year in the progress that I wanted to be making towards my goals. My sleeping habits, because I was watching television, as so many people do, late at night, and my inability to say no to people. I was spending a lot of time doing favors for other people, and I had less and less time to advance on my own coaching work and building our business. So I wasn't really where I wanted to be. So this realization, first of all, made me buy a book called The Sleep Revolution by Arianna Huffington, which is a fantastic book, by the way, if anyone has trouble sleeping. And I developed a one-liner for people that were taking me away from my agenda, like, I'm really tied up right now on a project, or I'm on a deadline, so if it can wait. And it was amazing to see how people kind of got the hint when I said those things and were able to back off. And that brings up a really good point, which is all of these tools are great to know about, but they're useless if you don't put them into practice. And that's why the final point we'll mention on self-awareness is discipline. It takes time and effort to build your self-awareness, and without the discipline to stick to the tools and the practice, it's going to be more difficult to gather the right kind of information. So again, you need to have a game plan for how you're going to allocate the time and energy towards increasing your self-awareness. And we're talking about putting it down and getting to work. So from time to time, looking at what's working and what's not working very well. Last week, I wasn't very productive at all. And I didn't want that to turn into a bad habit. So at the end of the week, I sat down with myself and I looked at what was I doing to contribute to that. And I realized I hadn't been doing my yoga. I mean, it sounds really simple. And ironically, it means that I had 90 extra minutes each day. But because yoga really centers me, calms my mind, and allows me to focus better, that's what I needed to re-inject into my routine to get my productivity back. If I hadn't forced myself to self-reflect, I wouldn't have had that epiphany and awareness of what I needed to do. So our question to you is, what can you commit to in terms of scheduling this time in to build your self-awareness? And this will keep you on track towards both your personal and your professional goals. So self-management is about how well we're able to manage our emotions and our ability to switch gears when it's needed to best serve the situations we find ourselves in. And it's essential to sticking to our goals. It's sometimes called self-regulation, and it's being able to manage the emotional part of your brain, called the amygdala, taking over the decision-making part of your brain, called the prefrontal cortex, when something stressful happens. So in times of stress, fear, and anxiety, our fight or flight response is activated and sometimes results in overreactions or sudden irrational decisions. And Daniel Goleman called this overreaction to stress the amygdala hijack in his book, Emotional Intelligence, Why It Can Matter More Than IQ, another great book. And this is particularly important when you're under a consistent amount of pressure. In other words, working in a high stress environment, which so many people do. And this pressure starts to compound, and your window of tolerance for things that wouldn't normally send you over the edge becomes smaller and smaller. So it's like the expression, something's got to give. You have to realize that this is happening as it's happening and make a conscious effort to change something. And the first step towards self-management is really just noticing when this is happening and coming back to a state of calm and clear from crisis. Like maybe your heart is racing, or your stomach is feeling upset, or you just can't shake a really uneasy feeling. And maybe you're reaching for snacks. That's what some people do. Or maybe you're just really irritable. So when this happens, remind yourself that what you're feeling is an automatic response, but it's not one that's serving you. So concentrate on your breathing and do something to consciously bring yourself back to a rational state. Like could be going for a walk or talking it out with someone you're close to. They even say like playing with your pet if you're working from home. Or, and once you've reached a state of calm, rational state, you can think about a logical solution and plan your action steps. Like that's the moment that you're going to be able to make a clear decision. So how does this relate to leadership and leading better in business? Well, according to a recent study, when leaders fail to manage their stress in a constructive way, more than 50% of their employees perceive their leader as harmful or ineffective. Also, when leaders are unable to manage stress, employees lose their drive to advance within the company. So what that means is you've got team members who are losing motivation, and that's scary because you've spent time training them and investing in them. And if it continues, people are going to resign. So what do you do about this? And one of the most effective ways to manage stress is mindfulness. So when leaders actively engage in mindfulness practices, the psychological capital of an organization rises. Psychological capital refers to hope, self-efficacy, resilience, and optimism. And it's been shown to be important for employee performance, well-being, and ultimately on-the-job success. So how leaders manage their own stress directly impacts the levels of these four components. And wouldn't it be nice if every corporate environment could have these four ingredients? Mindfulness helps leaders master two specific, really effective ways of processing stress. They're able to personally separate themselves from stressful events. They learn to not take organizational threats personally, and they're able to observe situations from a really neutral position rather than becoming personally engaged. And mindfulness helps leaders control their reactions to threats or difficult situations so that they can process their options rather than reacting without thinking. And this sounds really easy. Haha. Actually, again, it's a practice that you can get better at over time, and science and research back this up. When you practice mindfulness, you are activating your parasympathetic nervous system and creating new neural pathways. Your parasympathetic nervous system works to slow down certain responses and bring about a state of calm to your body, allowing it to rest and repair itself and ultimately think clearly. And all great leaders know that this is the key to rational decision making and being able to see the big picture. And it might seem like really new age or woo-woo, like what are you going to do? 10 minutes of breathing or meditation in the middle of your workday? Well, yes, this is our message to teams and leaders. Even if it doesn't feel super comfortable at first, once you see the results, it will become like second nature. And when you look at leaders, when you look at their strategies for how they manage, it's something that really works, and it's science backs it up. So what are some ways to activate this tool? Well, meditation, and maybe that means guided meditation. Like, meditation used to scare me, and I found apps that taught me how to do it. Or, just closing your eyes and being still and quiet for 10 minutes and breathing in and out and listening to your breath. Or, as we mentioned, going for a walk outside in the fresh air. Anything that's going to allow you to just calm yourself down and get really quiet and block out the noise, I would say. And self-management also has a lot to do with how willing we are to be open and vulnerable and speak about what we're struggling with. It's having the courage to speak out and ask for help. We're all human after all, and no one has or should be expected to have all the answers. So think about how you can surround yourself with individuals who can provide you with accountability and keep you pushing forward. And lastly, self-management is also about time management. This is my favorite topic because it's always been very difficult for me to focus. And a skill that is often spoken about, and the reason there's so much content created and books written and apps developed to help us manage our time better, is that a lot of people struggle with it. So time management is less about time and the time that you're spending, and more about where you're placing your focus. How can you shift it to the tasks and activities that are meaningful to you, and that will get you closer to achieving your goals, given the many distractions, especially today, and perhaps more trivial issues that seem to take over. Dr. Benjamin Hardy, an organizational psychologist and best-selling author of Willpower Doesn't Work and Personality Isn't Permanent, says that one of the key principles of high performance is knowing where you want to be and regularly looking at that and making that part of your identity. He suggests that we can train our brains to focus on what we want by having clear goals, writing about our goals, speaking to others about our goals, and actively focusing on people who are where we want to be one day. And he's really talking about what's called selective attention, which is a concept in psychology that says that whatever you focus on expands. Dr. Hardy explains that our mind is like a garden and we plant seeds in it all the time, but we need to make sure that we're planting the right things. One way to keep our mind focused is by creating a vision board so that you can look at it every day, or meditating on your vision of your future self, or even spending the first 90 minutes of the day, the time that our brain is at an optimal state for creativity, decision-making, and learning, on the one thing that will be the most impactful in pushing you forwards towards achieving your personal goals. Another great way to train your brain to focus is to journal or meditate on what you're trying to accomplish. And lastly, when we're looking at social media or the news, we're looking at other people's agenda, and that's not a good habit. So try not to do that first thing in the morning, at least, which is for most people the most productive time to get things done. And work on limiting the time you're focusing on other people's agenda in general. And imagine the impact on your business if you were able to focus on only the 3 most important tasks before doing anything else in the day. So now I'm going to pass it over to Dina.
Great, thanks, Val. And just that last point on social media, I was reading, I think it was an email in my inbox, a newsletter, and there was an article, and I just read the title because I didn't have time to go into the article yet, but it said, does social media decrease, or has social media decreased our empathy? which I thought was really interesting. So it's definitely having a lot of effect on us. And one of the pillars of emotional intelligence is empathy, which we'll get to. So for the last three pillars, we'll start with motivation. And motivation, as Daniel Goleman, who is the guru of emotional intelligence, describes it, it's a passion that goes beyond money and status. So do you know why you're doing what you're doing? And is this clear for you? And what about where that is taking you? Do you have the vision for where you're going? And the idea is that once we know what we're motivated by, in other words, we know where we're going and why, we can be far more productive and effective with achieving our goals, whatever they may be. And it definitely makes for better leaders as well. The clearer your vision and mission is, the clearer it will be to those around you, and people will just be encouraged to join you more so. And as leaders, no matter what type of leader you are, you'll face constant adversity and challenges that you have to overcome. And it's our motivation that will give us the momentum that we need, and it is our motivation that will reignite our spirits to get us through difficult times. For example, think about your to-do list at work. How do you feel about each of the activities on that list? Which ones do you love? Which ones do you always tend to procrastinate? And once you know what those are, which ones are you maybe able to delegate or get some extra support on? So you can focus more on the ones that inspire you and give you energy rather than zap it. And we know that it's not realistic that we can take all of the ones that we really don't like and give them to someone else. But it bears mentioning that this is something that we don't consciously do. We just take our to-do list for granted or as a given. So figuring out what motivates us is also the key to keeping that momentum going, especially in times when we really feel like just giving up. And this just might be the key that you need to stick it out when you feel that, again, it's just easier to give up in that situation. And another key aspect of motivation is who you're surrounding yourself with. So whether we're aware of it or not, who we are interacting with has a drastic impact on our motivation. Are the people around us enthusiastic? Are they energetic? Are they, challenging us? Are they empowering us? What if they're the complete opposite? We can make a note of how much energy we actually gain or lose depending on the person or people that we're surrounding ourselves with. And so the people around us affect our energy, thereby affecting our motivation. And the fact that we're in control of who we choose to be around, for the most part, we therefore have motivation within our control, again, for the most part. And finally, celebration. It's a really massive part of motivation. And people might think that, it takes too much time and energy to celebrate. This is a waste of time, but it's really an integral part of building and retaining momentum that in turn feeds our motivation. So it's kind of like a cycle. And celebrating successes also emphasizes the positive, which can help us manage the negative when it does come, so it doesn't feel so imbalanced. So if you're a leader of a team, make sure that you're being mindful of this. Even if you're not a leader, maybe this is something that you can initiate with the teams that you're working with, to be able to provide moments for the team to celebrate and help others on your team or your colleagues, by patting them on the back, recognizing them for something that they've done, having a coffee to talk about their successful bits and not just, what they've done wrong. Anything that you can design in the workplace to make sure that these significant moments, big or small, are really honored. and especially women who don't traditionally celebrate their successes because it's seen as showing off. So if that's difficult, I know I struggle with this. And so if that's difficult for you to do, as a man or a woman, start by celebrating other people's successes and kind of, getting a feel for it as well. And we may think that we need to wait again for something really monumental or significantly impactful in order to celebrate it. But it's so much more about taking the time to acknowledge our own and others' continuous contributions and achievements. So at one of the companies or agencies I used to work for, the GM there actually introduced the concept of something that was called teaming at the time. So every 2 weeks, we would nominate and vote for our team members. So we were asked to nominate and then vote on who we decided at the time was either the most helpful or the most cheerful or the most efficient, and so on. And every 2 weeks, we carved out time at the end of the week to get together and hand out these awards. And it was something so small. And of course, you're getting an award at work for, being the most cheerful the last 2 weeks. It's something that seems so insignificant, but it really solidified for us a culture where we celebrate our successes, big and small. It created a culture of acknowledgement and a feeling of accomplishment. Even if we didn't necessarily feel like we'd accomplished anything really in the last 2 weeks, at least we had some form of accomplishment with these awards. And the recognition from the team that, you went the extra mile, hey, I'm recognizing you for that, or that, oh, hey, I recognize that you really lightened up the mood this week. That made all the difference. And it really impacted our motivation and drove us to keep pushing, especially during the tougher times at work. And now for the next pillar, empathy. And one that we feel has been the most important throughout the last few years. And the question is, can empathy be taught? This is actually one of the questions that I had when I was learning about emotional intelligence a few years ago. Can we actually be taught to understand how another person is feeling or what they're going through? Can we be taught to put ourselves in another person's shoes? Well, apparently we can. And also I learned as a mom of a toddler now that empathy is only developed once we're 5 years old, which is super interesting, but also that it's not just something that comes naturally to us, that as parents, as teachers, as whoever has influence over the child really needs to emulate empathy so that, a child can learn it and practice it on their own. So it really starts with an understanding that even though we're at work, especially we're in a transactional relationship, we're all concerned with the bottom line, of course, but we do have to work well together as human beings and with others in order to achieve, the collective goals that we have. And empathy is made up of compassion, understanding, and also validating others. We need to be able to understand what another person is going through. And it's difficult to do this when we can't see things from their point of view. Empathy is what allows us to really walk alongside our people and help them. It's a skill that me and Val as coaches have had to really hone in order to help our clients. Because when we're able to empathize with someone, truly empathize, we're able to co-create solutions that benefit us all. And it's not just what we think is the best course of action, but we're coming up with the best collective solution. And when we're able to empathize with others as well, it opens up and deepens our level of communication with them. And, who doesn't want that? A really important part of developing our empathy is, again, about our own self-awareness. That's why Val had mentioned at the beginning, when explaining what self-awareness is, it really is the foundation for everything else. Of course, there's a connection, between all of these emotional intelligence pillars, but with self-awareness, the point is, as you recognize some things in yourself, it's then easier for you to have empathy in others who may have the similar or the same things going on. So as we become more self-aware and are able to view ourselves and our thoughts and our actions without the judgment, when we're then able to extend this to others, it can really help us expand our thinking and previous limiting beliefs that we may have had. When I look back on my corporate experience, even though I struggled with many challenges then, I can now, as a coach, coaching people in the corporate world, I can have empathy for someone who's going through a similar challenge that I went through. I can understand how they might perceive situations, how certain people can make them feel, or why they reacted in that way. Instead of judging or criticizing this person, I can instead offer acknowledgement and compassion for what they're facing. I'm not saying I'm perfect. I might still do a little bit of judging and criticizing, but I'm trying my hardest to really practice and lean into empathy more. And I'm sure each one of us on this call today has an example of their own. If you've had a really deep personal experience that kind of changed your perspective on things, this experience now allows you to have empathy for those in possibly similar boats. It's a really fundamental part of being human and connecting through what we experience. And so how can we develop empathy? So these are some ways. Being open, really examining our preconception, our biases, our prejudices. Can we really truly put those on the side when we're dealing with others? The second is truly listening. Are we able to really listen to what another person is saying, without just thinking about what our response is going to be, and try to really understand their emotions and what they're needing? Thirdly, being curious and really inquiring about others' lives and being curious about the answers. Trying something different. Try doing things that maybe you haven't done before. It could be shadowing another person at work, for example. It's a great way of putting ourselves in someone else's shoes. And finally, doing good. Make a commitment to helping someone out either at work or in your personal life, and really see this through and kind of reflect back on that experience and see what you learn. And we really love this quote by astrophysicist and scientist Neil deGrasse Tyson. I'm one of his biggest fans. But he says, humans aren't as good as we should be in our capacity to empathize with feelings and thoughts of others, be they humans or other animals on Earth. So maybe part of our formal education should be training in empathy. Imagine how different the world would be if, in fact, we studied reading, writing, arithmetic, and empathy. And I mean, me and Val couldn't agree more. Okay, so by now, maybe some of you may be thinking, of course, it's really easy for you guys as coaches to sit here and talk about empathy, but is it really appropriate when at work or in the office or in a corporate environment? And we say yes, 100% yes, especially if you're a leader of others or a leader in some way. You're really missing out if you're not leveraging this skill. It may feel uncomfortable, at first, but that doesn't mean that there's anything wrong. And question this as well. If you feel really uncomfortable, with displaying empathy at the workplace, explore what prevents you maybe from expressing empathy. What do you need to become more aware of in yourself, maybe, so that you can make space for empathy to emerge? And I can tell you, just as a team coach, when you get a team of people into a room together and encourage them to build understanding from each other's perspectives, they just naturally become more collaborative and want to work collectively. And finally, the last pillar of emotional intelligence is social skills. And it's really just a composite of all the other pillars put together. When our self-awareness, self-management, motivation, and empathy come together, we're able to influence and engage with others in a more effective way. And we're able to strengthen our network and relationships. Think of servant leadership, which is about not only serving others, but it's also about serving ourselves. And this is what we believe fosters really great leadership. Great leaders know that their success is not only dependent on themselves, but it's so much more dependent on and is made up of their team's successes. And the people that they lead know that too. So the ability to build meaningful connections with others through empathy, through a positive mindset, creates emotionally intelligent leaders. And when people can truly feel like you care about them and their needs are taken into account, then they'll be more willing to join you on your own mission and vision. And I'm sure we all have, either bosses or managers or leaders that have emulated this for us and that we look up to as well. And research also shows this, that leaders that put their people first may not achieve the most profit short term, but they're the ones that are able to achieve the most long-term success. So to develop social skills, this again comes from Daniel Goleman's book, Emotional Intelligence. And he writes that there are these three things. The first, conflict resolution, learning to manage conflict rather than run away from it. Developing a growth mindset can really help with this. Conflict resolution can be studied in depth, but we want you guys to take away these two principles. Number one, and this is something that actually Val taught me, and I kind of always remember it. Number one, in a conflict, the other person is always at least 2% right in what they're saying. That can be hard to admit, but it's true. So if you can get curious about what that 2% is and find out more about why they feel the way they do, why they're taking the stand that they're taking, you'll probably uncover an even greater percentage of the truth. And number two, conflict resolution is really about finding a win-win situation. So you won't resolve a conflict if you're not willing to budge on at least parts of the things that you really care about. The second part of developing social skills is better communication. This sounds really simple, but I love this quote from George Bernard Shaw, and he says, "The single biggest problem in communication is the illusion that it has taken place." And I mean, how true is that? We've all been in situations where we either send an email or we've had a meeting with someone and we come out of the meeting and we're thinking we just discussed one thing and the other person's thinking we discussed something completely different. It's crazy, but becoming better communicators should be on everybody's list, in my opinion. And the third skill he's talking about is praising others. So, just complimenting others, noticing when someone has done something and recognizing them for it. Again, another obvious one, but setting the intention is really going to help you to do it. And it not only helps you to do it, but the more that you do it, it'll just come more naturally. You won't need to have to, set the intention every time. And yeah, so that's the end of our presentation. I'll hand it back over to Val.
Thank you, Dina. There was a lot of wisdom in what you said. Great part of the presentation. Okay, so we've come to the end of our presentation and we've covered the 5 pillars. So just as a reminder, self-awareness, the ability to be conscious of and focus on yourself. Self-management, the ability to adapt and self-regulate. Motivation, a passion that goes beyond money and status. And empathy, having compassion and understanding for others, and lastly, social skills, the ability to influence and engage more effectively. So hopefully you've put your email in the chat box, because we can send you these worksheets, which not only contain exercises, but they also contain some tips on conflict resolution, better communication, praising others, and some other skills around empathy. And these are going to help, they will help you drill down and get familiar with all of the different pillars to really like jumpstart your building your emotional intelligence one pillar at a time. Great. And so that's it for us today. And we just wanted to know if anybody has questions. Okay. Do we have to give the screen back? I don't know. In the meantime, if anyone, yeah, Anzala?
In the chat box as well, in case you cannot access the microphone. So yes, we will be uploading the video on YouTube. So in case you missed the first part, you should be able to listen to the first half of the presentation in case you missed it.
Great. And also check us out on social media, because we try to give tips about how to, how to collaborate and how to be a more cohesive team. And we're going to start a new campaign soon. So yeah, we just try to, we're very passionate about what we do, and happy to share any kind of information that we have. And we're constantly following trends of how to build better teams. So yeah, check us out.
Yeah, if you ever feel like if you don't have a question right now, but you think of something later, or you have any questions on the worksheet or anything that we'll send you, yeah, please feel free. There's our email there, there's our website and our socials like Val mentioned. Feel free to reach out. We're really passionate about building collective solutions for everybody. So, and we can only do that, together. So yeah, feel free to reach out.
Okay, so if there are no questions, then that's it for today's webinar. We really hope that you found this insightful, and thank you, Dina and Valerie, for highlighting the importance of emotional intelligence. I personally found it very interesting, and I hope that all of us who have joined today would start practicing it in our daily lives as well. So thank you so much to both of you.